and welcome to another episode of the Daily Objective. Today it's day 125 of the Israel war, and today with me is James. Hey James, how are you doing?
Pretty good. How about you?
I'm doing pretty well. My thing is going away, so I almost don't feel it at all. So
That's
I'm
good.
feeling
I
pretty
can't see
happy
it at
about that.
all. You looking your old handsome self.
I sure do. And today we're going to talk about mainly the Palestinian victim mentality. And what we mean by that is this idea of there is a certain status quo. Apparently, no Palestinians have any problem with it. Something happens, some Palestinians or some representation of Palestinians, like Hamas, attacks Israel, and then Palestinians want to push back against it. We didn't support it, we don't support it. Let us either go back to the way things were before, or some abbreviation of that. But first, before we go to that, let me just do a quick run up of the news. So the first thing is and we'll probably talk about this even during the show. Israel has offered to allow Hamas leaders in Gaza to go into exile in exchange for the release of all hostages. Amongst those Hamas leaders is also the person who orchestrated the October 7 attacks, and I believe it's the same person who was let go during the Gilad Shalit uh, uh, a hostage release.
Yeah.
So
Right.
they basically want to let him go again. So as Hamas has vowed to do another October 7 attack, at least I'll have the guy for it.
Let
Uh,
the main perp get away with it. Okay. Well, I think you can guess what my thoughts on that are.
but also, despite these sort of peace negotiations, Netanyahu also says that Israel is a touch away from a decisive victory. Uh, and also Abbas al-Dabs, a regional commander in Hezbollah, was eliminated in a drone strike. So it's always nice to see. It really looks like Lebanon is the best place to get rid of these terrorists, because I even remember the last or one of the top Hamas leaders was also eliminated in Lebanon. And one more not Israel news, Boris Nadezhdin, an anti-war candidate, was banned from election in Russia. He's going to appeal to the Supreme Court, and apparently the banning was due to errors in signatures and invalid signatures. There's been a lot of news from Russia, so maybe we'll talk about it soon, have it as a side topic of one of the reality shows, perhaps. And the last thing, Netanyahu ordered soldiers to be ready to deploy to Rafah, which actually currently holds more than 1 million refugees.
And
Uh,
also some leaders of Hamas, as I understand, are coming under siege. And that's probably the causal explanation for the we'll let your leader, the guy who planned October 7th, escape so long as you release the hostages. What a despicable deal that is. But obviously, it's because this Hamas leader is not living it up like others are in Qatar, say at the Ritz Carlton Hotel. There, he's actually stuck in the city that's under siege right now.
But let's talk mainly today. We'll talk about this interview that has been done in Rafah. Uh, a Gazan journalist, Sami Obeid, was interviewed, and I think he really well summarized all the points that are pretty much made in defense of Palestinians. And the first one, I guess I can quote the first one. Most of those who live in Rafah are intense. I see tremendous suffering. There is no aid. The prices are very high. A kilogram of sugar is 40 shekels. A liter of milk is 50 shekels. There are no goods, no money. A pack of cigarette costs 120 shekels. Just to put it into perspective, 40 shekels is about $10. So $10 for a kilogram of sugar, something like that, $13 for a liter of milk. Uh, so what do you think about the idea of the Palestinian suffering, and what do you think has caused this?
Oh, well, gosh, isn't there all that humanitarian aid that was supposed to be getting to them? Apparently, it's being circumvented, intercepted by Hamas, who are the first ones who get their mitts onto this humanitarian aid. So I'm, you know, I don't believe they should be getting any humanitarian aid because it's Hamas's fault that this man is suffering. This man should be clearly demanding that the hostages get released immediately and that Hamas surrender, that they stop the attacks, the rocket attacks that are still going on, that they stop the coordinated attacks from Hezbollah and all over the Middle East. I mean, that's what's going on here. The situation for the Palestinians in Gaza could be fixed tomorrow. All that has to happen is Hamas has to surrender. Hamas is the one responsible for what's happening. No one owes the Palestinians, as we said yesterday, food at all, support of any kind. No one owes them a living. No one owes them food. And if they're actually been involved in this attack, but of course, the defender has a right to cut off any supplies. Those supplies materially go directly to support things like October 7th and the ongoing rocket attacks on Israel. Just stop attacking Israel. It's that simple. So what he needs to do is this fellow needs to direct his attention not at the international community and not at Israel, of course, but at Hamas. And if they don't like it, if things are really bad there, then if it's life-threatening, then they better risk their lives to get rid of Hamas. If my government was responsible for not allowing me the conditions for my existence to be permitted, I would have to take out my own government. And it's my responsibility to deal with my government that is causing this. So it's not Israel's fault. That's like saying it's Israel's fault that October 7th happened at all. And that's the assumption. It all began with we broke out of our prison. We broke out of our concentration camp on October 7th. All of that hateful, anti-Semitic rhetoric, all of these sick, disgusting justifications for the horrific atrocities that some people still deny occurred. No, it's a justification for that. It is a total justification for that. Otherwise, the only other logical alternative here is that it's Hamas's fault, and it's your fault for putting Hamas in, Mr. or Mrs. Palestinian. It's your fault. You need to change your government. Your government is causing you to starve right now. It is 100% the fault of Hamas, any humanitarian crisis in Gaza. And we cannot, it would be immoral for us to mitigate the harm that Hamas is causing to its own people, because we would be keeping Hamas in power. So I sympathize with any innocent Palestinian's plight here. But innocent is, if you were to say, look, I'm under all this pressure from Hamas, I've got to agree with Hamas. I've got to do what Hamas tells me. I've got to hold hostages in the attic for Hamas because they're telling me so. No, you don't. If it means risking your life, you have to risk your life, especially since Hamas has put you in a situation that is risking your life, like starvation, like having to live in tents, like not having clean water. Once you identify whose fault it is, then you can get to the real cause of the problem. Saying that the world has to keep supporting them is to continue and perpetuate the problem, is to directly support Hamas. So I'm sorry for the people who are suffering, if there are innocent people suffering in Gaza, but that's Hamas's fault. And until we identify that, any support for the Palestinian people is taking the pressure off of Hamas, and allowing the Palestinian people to go along with Hamas. No, you're responsible for your government. You're responsible for your leaders. And if they're putting you in a deadly situation, this horrific situation, then it's worth taking the kind of risks that are appropriate for that. You have to risk your own life. I'm sorry. It's your authorities, though, that are causing this problem, not Israel, not the international community. If anything, the international community, we're happy to feed you, and that would be wrong. The international community has no such duty, but as long as you've got dozens and dozens, perhaps over 130 hostages still there, how could you even raise the question? Of course you're starving. Expect to starve. Expect your children to suffer. Expect your children to suffer, so long as you continue to support in any way, even implicitly, what happened on October 7th. You can't demand the right to continue to do October 7th. You can't demand that Hamas get fed so that they can continue to lob rockets just because you're suffering. That is insane. So you're saying that the victims of your attack have to feed you have to feed you, even though you're not doing anything to remove the government that caused the problem, Hamas, the semi-government that caused the problem in the first place. That's illogical on its face. It's, as I say, it's worse than sanction of the victim. It's the demand that you materially support your own destroyers. If this guy could understand, see with his own eyes and his own mind conceptually that Hamas is the one who is starving him right now. Hamas is what's doing it. If he could see that, then he would direct his attention against Hamas properly. No, we need to get the we need to round up our leaders and turn them over to Israel. How about we do that? And that's going to take some life risk, some dangerous behavior. But look, the government, the quasi-government that you elected 16 years ago is responsible. It's your government. It's your values. It's your organization. You're responsible for this suffering right now, sir.
Yeah, one thing we should mention is some people might say, well, the last election was, like you said, 16 years ago when the whole Hamas control over Gaza was established. Well, they don't push for new elections. No one is calling for new elections. And it's not like there was much criticism of Hamas before October 7th when there were rockets going into Israel every day. It's not like there was even any push against Hamas on October 7th. Many Palestinians participated directly in the attack, participated directly in taking some hostages, and everyone celebrated it. Not even weeks after it, there was no real push. The only push started after Hamas started losing heavily, after IDF started gaining a lot of ground in Gaza. Of course, and even now, it's not like everyone is pushing against Hamas. They're still mainly pushing against either Israel for attacking them, or they're having just some general problems with what's going on right now, but no one is talking about Hamas. I mean, even in this interview of the Gazan journalist Sami Obeid, when he was asked about basically what's going on right now and why people are not standing up against Hamas, well, he said, we didn't do October 7th, Hamas did it. Or this was more about Israel claims that there are no innocents in Gaza, and his response to "there are no innocents" is, "We didn't do October 7th. Hamas did it. They did it, and they were wrong. Tens of thousands dead, 100,000 wounded. How long will this last? Open the sea for us. Let us go. Hamas controls Gaza. If they come to my house, what can I do? What can I tell them? No one in Rafah will say a word about Hamas. They are afraid of Hamas. They control Hamas." And the point that you laughed about that I made of is Jews are in the attic. What can I do? How can I stand up against my government?
Don't cooperate in such horrible things. Don't celebrate it. Don't hand out candy to kids and dance in the streets on October 7th. But let's assume that there are a small minority of adults who are actually aware and innocent in that sense. Well, where, during World War II, there was a massive resistance against the Nazis in Germany, in France, in Poland. Yeah, where's the anti-Hamas resistance among the Palestinians? I believe that the United States, for example, there is a significant, in the Islamic Republic of Iran today, there is a significant portion of the population that does not like that government, that resists that government. And occasionally they attempt to fight back. Occasionally, despite the authoritarian, theocratic nature, the horrifically violent things they do to blasphemers and people who violate the slightest rules of wearing a hijab, no freedom of speech. Despite all of that, there is an anti-Islamic, Islamicist contingent within Iran. And whenever they do try and fight back, what help does the West give them? What help does America ever give them? I would be happy to help those people overthrow their government. We should be. But there isn't even such a thing among the Palestinians in Gaza or the West Bank. There is no resistance movement. Where are the brave, General de Klerk, the leader, one of the leaders with de Gaulle of the French resistance against the Nazis, right? During the Vichy regime. Where's the de Gaulle, the de Klerk? the French resistance leaders among the Palestinians. It doesn't exist. There is no Palestinian resistance to this. These people aren't fighting back. These people aren't trying to throw out the people who perpetrated the atrocities on October 7th. And it's their government. If it's their leadership, if they don't want to be part of Israel and live in peace with Israel, then they are directly responsible. They have to fight back. So no one else's duty or obligation even there. I'm sorry for them. I'm sorry for them if there's a gun, Hamas gun put to their head, but it's the Hamas gun put to their head that's the problem, not Israel. Look, if you are truly being forced, if Hamas has so intimidated the population that they're not fighting back, then it's Hamas again that's the problem, not Israel. Hamas is the problem. And frankly, I don't see any Palestinian resistance, whatever, a point I've made before. And so under those circumstances, I'm afraid there is no way for Israel to distinguish, quote, innocent civilians from non-innocent civilians. You guys don't have a resistance movement that Israel or America could support. You don't have an alternative to Hamas. Where's your organization that says we would set up a government that would be tolerant of Israel, that would not perpetrate October 7th? Where is that organization?
Oh, the
Where is that
Palestinian
alternative?
Authority.
No. They were celebrating October 7th. They were justifying October 7th.
Yeah,
That's exactly my point.
One thing that I've recently heard about is apparently even Mahmoud Abbas, who is no celebrator of Israel, but is to some extent willing to negotiate, is seen as somewhat of a traitor, is incredibly unpopular in the West Bank. The Palestinian people themselves, they don't want Israel to exist. It has been like that. And it's not about the Palestinian state. It's not their primary goal is the destruction of Israel. It's not even a creation of Palestine, because we've seen that in 48 after the Declaration of Independence and basically the civil war. What happened after that? After Israel was allowed to fought for its independence and for its right to exist. What happened after that? Was there in the places such as basically what's now West Bank and Gaza, was there established a Palestinian state? No, Egypt took over Gaza, West Bank took over, Jordan took over West Bank, and that there was no state until another war.
It was Jordan and Egypt that controlled Gaza and the West Bank until they attacked Israel. And they repeatedly attacked Israel to destroy Israel. And only decades on did they say, oh, well, we'll have a separate independent Palestinian state. But that wasn't the goal either for the Palestinians. It's the utter destruction of Israel. And they would accept nothing less. It's quite plain from both their charter and their behavior. They do not want Israel to exist as such. That is their goal. This Palestinian Authority, Mr. Abbas, he pays a bounty to terrorists who kill Jews. Now, if he is unpopular among the Palestinian population, it shows just how insidiously evil the ideas that totally dominate the Palestinian people are today. They are dominated by a savage, racist commitment to destroy Israel and to kill Jews. That is their highest goal. That is their raison d'etre. That is their purpose for existing. And any other goal is just a distraction. And in fact, we're suckered in insofar as we even believe the words coming out of someone's mouth. Until I see a Palestinian resistance movement that we in the West could support, the Palestinians are guilty, and there's no way for the West to distinguish the two. So long as the Palestinian Authority is paying a bounty to terrorists, they're no moderates. They're not seeking peaceful coexistence with Israel at all, nor do they give a crap about the conditions of their own people. No, they want the conditions of their own people to be bad so that they can have headlines. See what Israel is doing to us? No, they are doing it to themselves. 100% their fault. Full stop.
Yeah, and you can see it even in their propaganda when it comes to even reporting casualties. Hamas doesn't differentiate between civilians or militants. It's all civilians. It's just one number. It's the same thing.
Right? It's all the same to them. They don't distinguish the two. They don't acknowledge the existence of, quote, innocent Palestinians when they report their numbers, which I don't trust. But I mean, I can understand why Israel doesn't report similar numbers, although they must have their own numbers.
So I believe I think they at least report the proportionality, how many civilians to how many
that they
militants
have.
are dying. I think
And in
that's 2 to 1
fact,
at the moment.
exactly. And in most wars, it's much, much higher. Civilians actually usually take a much, much higher hit in wars. Israel has, they call what Israel's doing genocide is insane. It's upside down. Never before has there been so surgical an attempt to avoid civilian casualties in the history of warfare. I mean, it's utterly insane to me that you would send text messages and drop leaflets to get people out of buildings before you bomb them. It's just insane. You don't do that. Look, Israel cannot distinguish between whatever, quote, innocent Palestinians there might be there, precisely because Palestinians so overwhelmingly support this genocide against Israel, which is in Hamas's charter. Under those conditions, Israel has to attack civilians, has to attack civilians. And again, it's not Israel's fault that they
Well,
have to attack
okay, let me
civilians.
just quickly make sure we're on the same point. It might not have to like directly attack civilians, but pretty much any infrastructure that exists that Hamas takes place in, there are no military bases. It's all hospitals, it's all schools, it's all some sort of civilian infrastructure. So in that way, they do have to accept a certain degree of civilian casualties because there is no other way to get to Hamas.
No, that's why I say it the way I do. Because Hamas is using their civilians as instruments of war, Hamas is using sick people in hospitals, children in schools, civilians in private homes. Hamas is using them, qua innocent, quote, innocent civilian, as a tool. Any tool of your enemy you have to destroy. I don't care if it's a rocket launcher or a human being. And that human being made a tool of aggression against you makes that civilian a necessary target. I will go that far.
And we have also seen that a lot of those civilians are actively cooperating
Yes,
with Hamas. I believe we've seen some videos of doctors in hospitals pretty much seeing Hamas militants and not doing
how
much
does it
about it.
happen? How does it happen that they're in schools and hospitals and residential neighborhoods if the population isn't supporting them? No, they obviously have the cooperation of the vast majority of the people. You couldn't get away with that. The doctors, the mothers, the teachers, they're all the UNRWA teachers. We know what they think, but no, but the teachers at those schools, the mothers in those residential homes, the doctors and nurses in those hospitals, there has to be a wide degree of support among those people for what Hamas is doing, or Hamas couldn't do it. And that makes them necessarily important targets for Israel to hit. They must hit them and include the people within them, because those people are tools. They're like guns. They're like rocket launchers. And if Hamas is reducing these people in effect, to being rocket launchers, Israel has no choice but to attack those very civilians and kill them. I'm going to say it that baldly.
Let's quickly go to super chat. So we have a super chat from Jonathan. Thank you so much. A super chat from Apollo Zeus. Thank you. Super chat from Bonnie. Thank you so much. And a super chat from Andy Bacco. I think that's how it's pronounced. He says there are a lot of Palestinians that are against Hamas. Why is nobody reporting that? I saw a video with Gazans talking to IDF soldiers to bring them to justice. So I think this specific video, we might have even talked about it, it's going to be a couple of weeks ago. But yeah, we still made a point. It's easy to now, after IDF comes in and protects you, it's somewhat easy to start speaking out against Hamas. But when was this before October 7th? When was this on October 7th? Even some days after October 7th, it was nowhere to be seen. We only see it now after IDF controls a huge part of Gaza already.
Right. Well, you see, that's the whole thing. They're trying to fool people into allowing them. Look, if I were when the police capture a criminal, the normal criminal doesn't immediately say, "Oh, you got me. I'm the guy you're looking for." No, if I was a Hamas operative, I would say, "Oh, help me against Hamas." Once the IDF was there, right? I mean, you'd be stupid. That's what Hamas leaders would say. And we're supposed to believe them? No. As I say, there may well be innocent Palestinians. Unfortunately, it is their leadership, it is their responsibility. So there better be an anti Hamas resistance group. Where is that? I see all kinds of groups. I see the Palestinian Authority, right? Islamic Jihad, the Muslim Brotherhood. You got the Hezbollah this, Hezbollah that, all kinds of Islamicist organizations in the Middle East. Where is the anti-Islamicist resistance group? Where is the French resistance, the Polish resistance, even the German resistance to the Nazis, for example? Where is even, like I would say, these anti-Islamicists who are trying to get a better government in Iran? They at least fight back. They at least will object. There are at least groups in Iran that we could support. I see no such group in Gaza. I see no such organization on the West Bank. Now, in the West Bank, it's not even the focus of the attack right now. You would think that if there were anything like even a 5% of the Palestinians opposed this, there would be some kind of organization in the West Bank today, of some kind, asking for protection from Israel, asking for protection from the international community for their free speech rights to object to these terrorist monsters. But no, we see nothing of the sort. There is no such organization. I wonder how many you could actually collect in one room.
Let me just quickly cover the last super chat that came in. We only have a couple of minutes. So first, thank you, Gail, for your super chat. And thank you, Ori, for your super chat. He says, maybe Israel is not telling the truth about going and they're going to find the Hamas leaders in the future, regardless if they escape now. Thoughts? And I think he means even if they, let's say, do the deal and let the Hamas leaders go into exile, that Israel might come after them then.
That would be the only excuse for the deal. I mean, I could see going along with the deal to get the hostages out and then breaking our word. Israel has no moral obligation to keep a promise to Hamas. None whatever. Get the hostages back and then go wherever they're going, or if they're on a boat or a plane, shoot it down. In fact, if they were to do the deal, I would require that Israel do everything possible to kill the people they said they could go, to break their word. You have every right to lie under those circumstances, to break a promise. I would snooker them in, perhaps. This is the only possible justification for dealing with these monsters that I could even conceive of. But if you had that in mind, and if you knew you could kill the guy that you promised to let go, only under the circumstances where I was pretty sure I could kill that guy. Oh, I'm promised to let him go. Yeah. Give me the hostages, and once all the hostages are gone, then I must go out and kill him. And only under the circumstances that Israel plans, intends, and thinks they can, would it even be conceivable that such an agreement would be valid in my mind.
And with that thought, we have about a minute, so let's wrap up. In about a minute, we have the reality show. It's going to be about managing million murderer marches. So make sure to check that out. It's going to be a lot of fun. And we'll be back with the daily objective tomorrow at the same time. Thank you, James. Thank you, everyone, and bye-bye.